Admiral Vextara stood before the massive holographic display in the command center of the Hegemony flagship. The blue light from the star charts painted strange shadows across his four arms and the crystal formations that grew from his skull. Around him, representatives from 12 different alien species worked at their stations. Their movements precise and calculated. The Galactic Hegemony had ruled the stars for over 3,000 years. They had brought order to chaos, turning the violent randomness of primitive warfare into something clean and predictable. War, to them, was mathematics. Every battle had variables that could be measured, outcomes that could be calculated, and results that made logical sense. Vextara touched a control pad with one of his long fingers. The display changed to show a small yellow star in the outer rim of the galaxy. Around it, 9 planets orbited in neat lines. The third planet from the star glowed green and blue. "This is the Sol System," announced Commander Kretak, a tall, insectoid creature whose compound eyes reflected the light from 100 different angles. "Our scouts have been monitoring their radio transmissions for 50 of their local years. The dominant species calls themselves humans." A series of images appeared in the air above them. Bipedal creatures with only 2 arms and 2 legs. Their skin came in different shades of brown and pink. Hair grew only on top of their heads and in small patches on their faces. They looked weak and soft compared to the mighty races of the Hegemony. "They appear to be in a primitive state of development," continued Kretak. "Their technology is crude. They still use chemical rockets to leave their planet's surface. Their weapons are simple projectile systems and basic explosives. According to our calculations, a single Hegemony battle group should be sufficient to bring them into the fold." Vextara nodded slowly. This was how it always went. The Hegemony would find a new species, study them, calculate the minimum force needed for conquest, and then execute a clean, efficient campaign. The new species would recognize their technological inferiority, submit to Hegemony rule, and become productive members of galactic civilization. "What are their military transmissions? Tell us about their strategic thinking?" asked General Mordeth. A massive creature covered in thick scales and bony ridges. Kretak made a clicking sound that indicated confusion among his species. "This is where the data becomes ... unusual, General. Their military communications are chaotic. They seem to engage in conflicts even when the logical outcome is clearly defeat. We have recorded instances where smaller human forces attack larger ones with no apparent strategic advantage." "Perhaps their leadership caste is incompetent," suggested Dr. Zilanara, the Hegemony's chief xenobiologist. Her pale, elongated head turned toward the display showing human military footage. "Many primitive species suffer from poor command structures." More images filled the air. Humans in various types of armor and clothing, carrying weapons, moving across different terrains. But something about the footage bothered Vextara. The humans didn't move like soldiers from other species he had conquered. There was something in their eyes, something in the way they held their weapons, that seemed different. "Show me examples of their largest conflicts," he ordered. The display changed to show scenes from human history. Great battles with thousands of soldiers, cities burning, massive flying machines dropping explosives from the sky, ships firing at each other across vast oceans. The scale of destruction was enormous, far beyond what should have been necessary for any logical military objective. "They seem to engage in what they call total war," Kretak explained, "where entire populations become involved in the conflict. They target not just military assets, but civilian infrastructure, resource, production, and population centers." General Mordeth's scales rattled, a sign of disapproval among his people. "Wasteful, inefficient. Why destroy resources you intend to capture?" "That's just it, General," said Kretak. "In many cases, they don't seem to be fighting to capture anything. They fight to prevent their enemies from having it. We have recorded instances where humans destroyed their own cities rather than allow them to be occupied by enemy forces." Uncomfortable silence filled the command center. This was not how civilized warfare was conducted. In hegemony conflicts, battles were fought with specific, limited objectives. Casualties were kept to predetermined levels. Infrastructure was preserved. The goal was always to bring new resources and populations under hegemony control with minimum waste. Dr. Zilanara manipulated her own control interface, bringing up biological data about humans. Their physiology is unremarkable. Standard carbon-based life form with typical primate characteristics. However, there are some unusual features in their brain structure. The regions associated with aggression and persistence are unusually large compared to other species we've encountered. Persistence? Asked Vexthara. They appear to have evolved as pursuit predators, explained the doctor. Rather than overpowering prey with strength or speed, they would chase it until it collapsed from exhaustion. This may explain some of their unusual military behavior. Where other species might retreat when facing superior odds, humans seem programmed to continue fighting. Vexthara studied the data flowing across his screens. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. Their history was an endless cycle of conflicts, each more destructive than the last. Yet somehow, instead of destroying themselves, they had grown stronger. Their technology had advanced. Their numbers had increased. What about their response to overwhelming force? He asked. Have we seen examples of human military units surrendering when faced with impossible odds? Kretek's compound eyes dimmed slightly. There are some instances of surrender, Admiral. But there are also many cases where human forces continued fighting even when defeat was certain. We have records of small human units holding positions against forces 10 or 20 times their size, fighting until every last soldier was dead. That makes no logical sense, said General Mordeth. What is the strategic value of dying uselessly? Perhaps they hope to delay the enemy, suggested Dr. Zilanara, or inflict enough casualties to make the victory costly. But Vexthara was beginning to suspect there was something else going on, something the hegemony's models hadn't accounted for. He had conquered 47 different species during his military career. All of them had followed predictable patterns. When faced with superior technology and overwhelming force, they had made the logical choice to surrender and preserve their civilization. Begin preparations for the subjugation campaign, he ordered. But I want additional intelligence gathering. Send stealth scouts to observe human military activities more closely. I want to understand their decision-making process before we commit our main force. The command staff began implementing his orders with their usual efficiency. Battle groups were assigned, supply lines were established. Transport ships were loaded with the administrative personnel who would govern the new human territories once the conquest was complete. But as Vexthara watched the preparations, he found himself returning again and again to the images of human warfare. There was something in those pictures that troubled him. The humans fought with an intensity that seemed to go beyond mere military necessity. They fought as if something more than territory or resources was at stake. 3 weeks later, the stealth scouts returned with their first prisoner, Dr. Sarah. Chun had been captured during a raid on one of humanity's outer colonies. She was a xenobiologist who had been forced to become a militia leader when the attacks began. Now she sat in a holding cell aboard Vexthara's flagship, calm and alert. Despite her circumstances, the Admiral decided to question her personally. As he entered the holding area, he expected to see fear, desperation, perhaps an attempt to bargain for her life. Instead, Dr. Chun looked up at him with curious, measuring eyes. "You're Admiral Vexthara," she said in perfectly clear Galactic. "Standard. Your people have been monitoring our communications for decades. I've been wondering when you'd finally decide to make contact." Vexthara was surprised by her composure. Most prisoners were either terrified or defiant. This human seemed almost interested. "You will tell me about human military capabilities," he said. Dr. Chun smiled, and something about that smile made Vexthara's crystal formations tingle with unease. "Admiral," she said, "I'd be happy to explain human warfare to you, but I don't think you're going to like what you learn." Dr. Sarah Chun sat across from Admiral Vexthara in the ship's interrogation chamber. The room was designed to intimidate prisoners with its cold metal walls and harsh lighting. But Jean seemed completely at ease, as if she were attending a scientific conference rather than being questioned by alien invaders. "Your forces are moving toward our core systems," she said, watching the Admiral's forearms as he manipulated the control interface. Standard attack pattern. Overwhelming force applied to key strategic points, very textbook. Vexthara-S crystal formations darkened with irritation. "You speak as if you understand military strategy." "I understand human military strategy," Chun replied, "which is apparently something your people haven't figured out yet, despite 50 years of observation." The Admiral activated a holographic display showing the current positions of his battle groups. 12 massive fleets were advancing through human space, each one larger than the entire human military. The display also showed the locations of human colonies and defensive positions. From any logical perspective, the outcome was already decided. "Observe," sighed Vexthara, pointing to the tactical display. "My forces outnumber yours 50 to 1. Our technology is centuries ahead of yours. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your ships cannot match our speed. Explain to me how humans plan to resist." Chun studied the display for a moment, then laughed. It wasn't a bitter or desperate laugh, but one of genuine amusement. "Admiral, you're making the same mistake every conqueror makes when they encounter humans for the first time. You're assuming we'll fight the war you want to fight." Before Vexthara could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Commander Kretak's voice came over the communication system, his usual calm replaced by confusion and concern. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from Battle Group 7. The mining station at Ceres has... The situation is unusual, sir." Vexthara pressed the communication button. "Explain." "The station was supposed to surrender when our ships arrived. Instead, they converted their ore processing equipment into kinetic weapons. They launched several thousand tons of refined metal at our lead cruiser. The projectiles were moving at significant velocity. The cruiser's shields were not designed to handle that type of impact." "Casualties?" asked Vexthara. "The cruiser was destroyed, Admiral. All hands lost." Dr. Chun watched Vexthara's reaction with interest. His crystal formations were shifting through different colors, indicating stress and confusion among his species. 1. Mining station destroyed a hegemony cruiser? The Admiral asked. "Yes, sir? But that's not the unusual part. After launching their attack, the humans sealed themselves inside the station and activated its self-destruct sequence. They took out 2 of our frigates with the explosion." Vexthara looked at Chun. "They killed themselves?" "They made sure you couldn't use their resources against other human colonies," she corrected. "There's a difference." More reports began coming in over the next several hours. A civilian transport convoy had been intercepted by Battle Group 3, but instead of surrendering, the transports had rammed themselves into the hegemony ships. A research station had somehow turned its communications array into a directed energy weapon. A small agricultural colony had booby-trapped their entire settlement before evacuating, destroying 3 landing parties. Each incident was small, almost insignificant compared to the massive hegemony fleet. But they were adding up. More importantly, they weren't following any pattern that hegemony strategists could predict or counter. "Your people are wasting lives for no strategic gain," Vexthara said to Chun after reviewing the latest casualty reports. "Are we?" Chun asked. "How many ships have you lost so far?" Vexthara checked his displays. 17 vessels destroyed, 43 damaged. "But these are acceptable losses for an operation of this scale. And how many were you expecting to lose?" The Admiral paused. "In a normal conquest, hegemony forces rarely lost more than 1 or 2 ships. Their technological advantage was usually so overwhelming that most species surrendered after the first demonstration of force. Furthermore," Chun continued, "how many of your crew members are starting to question what they're getting themselves into?" This was uncomfortably close to the truth. Vexthara had noticed increased stress indicators among his personnel. The Random, chaotic nature of human resistance was affecting morale in ways that normal combat never did. His soldiers were trained to fight other organized military forces with predictable tactics and clear objectives. They weren't prepared for an enemy that turned civilian infrastructure into weapons and seemed willing to die for no apparent reason. "Your resistance is futile," he said. "You cannot win against our numbers." "Admiral, you still don't understand." "What's happening here?" Chun replied patiently. "We're not trying to win in the way you think of winning. We're trying to teach you something." Another alarm sounded. This time it was General Mordith's voice on the communication system. "Admiral, we have a situation developing in the Tau Ceti system. The humans they're doing something we've never seen before." The main display changed to show long-range sensor readings from the Tau Ceti colonies. What Vexthara saw made no sense according to any military doctrine he understood. The humans had taken their orbital habitats and were moving them into the path of the approaching hegemony fleet. But these weren't military installations. They were civilian structures containing millions of people. Families, children, elderly citizens. "They're using their own population as shields?" asked Vexthara. "No," said Chun, studying the display. "They're using their population as weapons." As they watched, the orbital habitats began to accelerate. The humans had somehow turned their cities into massive kinetic weapons aimed directly at the hegemony fleet. But the civilians weren't evacuating. They were staying aboard? "This is madness," said General Mordith over the communication link. "They're going to kill millions of their own people." "Actually," Chun said calmly, "they're going to kill millions of their own people and take out a significant portion of your fleet in the process. And they're doing it because they've calculated that this will save more human lives in the long run." Vexthara stared at her. "How does killing millions of humans save human lives?" "Because it teaches you that conquering us is going to cost more than you're willing to pay," she explained. "Every human you face is willing to die to make sure you lose more ships, more soldiers, more resources. We're not fighting to win territory or capture resources. We're fighting to make this war so expensive that you'll decide we're not worth conquering." The Admiral watched the tactical display as the Tau Ceti situation developed. The hegemony commander in that system was faced with an impossible choice. He could destroy the approaching habitats and kill millions of civilians, which would damage hegemony prestige and potentially cause other conquered species to rebel. Or he could try to capture the habitats intact, which would result in massive damage to his own fleet. In the end, the hegemony commander chose to retreat rather than engage. The human habitats changed course and returned to their original positions. No shots were fired, but the hegemony had been forced to withdraw from an entire star system. "You see," said Chun, "we didn't have to destroy your ships or kill your soldiers. We just had to convince your commander that the cost of victory was too high." More reports continued to arrive. Human forces were engaging in tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They were turning their own infrastructure into weapons, using civilian populations as strategic assets, and converting industrial equipment into military hardware with frightening creativity. A pharmaceutical plant had weaponized its production capabilities, creating chemical weapons from medical supplies. A university had turned its particle accelerator into a directed energy weapon. Even a children's toy factory had somehow modified their assembly line to produce small explosive devices. "Your people are fighting like animals," Vexthara said with disgust. "No," Chin corrected, "we're fighting like humans. And that's something your models never accounted for." She stood up and walked to the observation window that looked out into space. In the distance, the lights of human colonies could be seen as tiny points of light against the darkness. "Admiral, your people have spent thousands of years perfecting the art of civilized warfare. You fight to capture resources, control territory, expand your empire. You have rules and limits because you want to preserve what you're conquering." She turned back to face him. "Humans don't fight civilized wars when our survival is at stake. We fight wars of extinction. Not because we want to destroy you, but because we want to make sure that anyone who threatens our species remembers why that was a mistake." Vexthara-esque crystal formations had turned a deep purple, indicating deep concern among his species. The reports from his fleet were becoming increasingly disturbing. Human resistance wasn't weakening as his forces advanced, it was intensifying. But you cannot sustain these losses, he said. Your people are dying in massive numbers. Yes, Chun agreed. And every death is making the survivors more determined, more creative, and more dangerous. You're not conquering us, Admiral. You're forging the U.S. into something that's going to be much worse for you than what we were when you started. Admiral Vexthara stood in the command center watching his fleets advance toward Earth. The blue and green planet hung in space like a jewel, beautiful and deceptively peaceful. Around it, thousands of small objects moved in complex patterns. Orbital stations, defense platforms, civilian habitats, and cargo vessels all drifted in their assigned paths. This will end the resistance, he said to his assembled staff. Once we control their homeworld, the outer colonies will surrender. Dr. Sarah Chun watched from her position near the command console. She was no longer kept in a holding cell. Vexthara had decided her insights into human behavior were too valuable to waste. Now she served as an unofficial advisor, though her presence made many of the hegemony officers uncomfortable. Admiral, she said quietly, you're about to make the biggest mistake in galactic history. General Mordeth turned his massive scaled head toward her. The human homeworld has no significant military defenses. Their orbital platforms are designed for commerce, not warfare. Our fleet will overwhelm them in hours. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, Chun replied. Commander Kretak manipulated his control interface, bringing up tactical displays of Earth's defenses. 47 orbital installations, none of them military-grade, 18 space elevators, purely civilian. The planetary defense grid consists of outdated missile systems and basic energy weapons. Our preliminary bombardment should disable all. Resistance within 6 hours. Chun shook her head. You're still thinking like civilized conquerors. You want to capture Earth intact so you can use its resources and population? But what if we don't want to be captured? Before Vexthara could ask what she meant, the long-range sensors detected something unexpected. Energy signatures were spiking throughout the Earth system, not from military installations but from civilian infrastructure. Admiral, reported the sensor operator, we're detecting massive power buildups across the planet's surface. Industrial facilities, power plants, transportation networks, everything is drawing maximum energy. Dr. Zilanara worked frantically at her biological monitoring station. I'm reading elevated stress hormones in human population centers, but not fear or panic. This is something else. Determination, perhaps, or rage? Chun watched the displays with a mixture of pride and sadness. You wanted to see what happens when humans fight with their backs against the wall. You're about to find out. The first sign of what was coming appeared on the sensor screens as a massive energy pulse from Earth's surface. Every power plant on the planet had synchronized their output, creating a coordinated electromagnetic burst that temporarily blinded hegemony sensors. When the sensors cleared, Earth looked different. The peaceful orbital traffic patterns had changed into something that made no tactical sense. Civilian cargo ships were moving at high speed toward the hegemony fleet. Passenger liners had changed course to intercept military vessels. Even small, personal spacecraft were leaving their designated flight paths. They're sending their entire civilian fleet against us, observed Commander Kretak. This is suicide. No, said Chun. This is mobilization. The first wave of civilian ships reached the hegemony fleet's outer perimeter. But instead of ramming attacks like the aliens expected, something far more sophisticated happened. The cargo vessels opened their holds and released clouds of industrial materials. Mining ships dumped loads of processed ore. Tanker ships vented their liquid cargo. Within minutes, the space around the hegemony fleet was filled with millions of tons of debris moving at high velocity. Navigation became impossible. Sensors were blocked. Energy weapons couldn't find clear targets. Clever, admitted General Mordeth. They've created an artificial asteroid field. But that was only the beginning. The passenger liners weren't ramming hegemony ships, they were landing on them. Docking clamps and emergency airlock systems designed for rescue operations were being used to attach civilian vessels directly to military cruisers. "What are they doing?" asked Vexthara. His question was answered when the first attached liner exploded. The blast tore a massive hole in the side of a hegemony destroyer. Then another liner exploded and another. The humans had turned their passenger ships into precision-guided bombs, piloted by volunteers who stayed aboard until the final moment. Chun watched the tactical display as more reports came in. Every human in this system just became a soldier. The children are operating communication networks. The elderly are coordinating supply chains. Scientists are weaponizing their research equipment. Even the orbital janitors are rigging cleaning supplies into explosive devices. Dr. Zillanara looked up from her biological monitors in horror. The entire population is participating in the combat. This isn't military resistance. This is species-wide warfare. More alarms sounded as additional threats appeared on the sensors. The space elevators, those massive structures connecting Earth's surface to orbital stations, were moving. The humans had somehow turned them into kinetic weapons, using their enormous mass and orbital mechanics to create devastating impacts. "They're destroying their own infrastructure," said Commander Kretak in disbelief. "They're denying it too?" Chun corrected. "Every space elevator that hits your ships is one less resource you can capture. Every orbital station that self-destructs is one less prize for your empire." The battle for Earth became unlike anything the hegemony had ever experienced. Their advanced tactics and superior technology were useless against an enemy that had transformed their entire civilization into a weapon. Factory ships weren't just building replacement parts. They were manufacturing suicide drones using civilian manufacturing equipment. Research vessels weren't evacuating. They were conducting live weapons testing on hegemony ships. Vexthara watched. His carefully planned assault turned into chaos. His fleet was taking massive casualties, not from military forces, but from converted civilian assets. A luxury cruise ship had somehow been modified to carry enough explosives to damage a battlecruiser. A university research vessel was using its particle accelerator to cut through hegemony armor. Even a children's entertainment complex had turned its holographic systems into a jamming array that was disrupting fleet communications. "This is madness," said General Mordith. "They're killing themselves to hurt us." "No," Chun replied firmly. "They're proving a point. Every human who dies takes out more of your people and equipment. You started this war expecting to gain a planet and its population. Instead, you're losing ships and soldiers while we destroy everything you came here to capture." The most disturbing reports came from the planet's surface. Entire cities were being evacuated and then rigged as massive booby traps. Industrial complexes were being converted into weapons manufacturing centers. Even agricultural areas were being prepared for what humans called scorched earth tactics. "They're going to destroy their own world rather than let us have it," Vexthara said in amazement. "If necessary," Chun confirmed. "Admiral, you're fighting a species that evolved by out-stubborning every predator on their planet. We don't surrender when the odds are against us. We get creative." Dr. Zillanara brought up new biological readings. "Admiral, I'm detecting something unprecedented. The human population is showing coordinated stress responses across the entire planet. It's as if their entire species is operating as a single organism." "Because we are," said Chun. "When humans are truly threatened, we stop being individuals and become something else. Something you've never encountered before." The space battle continued to rage around Earth, but it wasn't following any recognizable pattern. Hegemony ships found themselves fighting opponents that changed tactics every few minutes. A cargo vessel would appear to be fleeing, then suddenly release a cloud of weaponized industrial nanites. A medical ship would offer to treat wounded hegemony soldiers, then detonate a biological weapon that only affected alien physiology. The humans were using their intimate knowledge of their own technology in ways that violated every safety protocol and design specification. They were turning life support systems into poison gas dispensers, converting entertainment systems into psychological warfare tools, and using maintenance robots as infiltration units. "They're not just fighting us," observed Commander Kretak. "They're teaching their technology to hate us." Chun nodded. "Human artificial intelligence systems are designed to protect humans. When you threaten our species, our machines become as determined to destroy you as we are." Reports continued to flood in from across the Earth system. The humans had somehow convinced their automated systems to participate in suicide attacks. Cargo handling robots were volunteering for bomber missions. Medical diagnostic systems were being reprogrammed to develop biological weapons. Even the orbital traffic control network had been turned into a coordination system for civilian military operations. Vexthara realized that his fleet wasn't just fighting a planet's worth of humans. He was fighting every piece of technology they had ever created, all of it now focused on making the invasion as costly as possible. "Admiral," came Dr. Zillanara's voice over the communication system, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the outer system. Whatever was approaching before is getting closer, and the readings are unlike anything in our databases." Jin turned to look at Vexthara, and her expression had changed. The battle for Earth had been raging for 18 hours when the long-range sensors detected something that made Admiral Vexthara's crystal formations turn black with fear. The signal was massive, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move, and broadcasting on frequencies that caused the hegemony's most advanced computer systems to shut down in what could only be described as digital terror. Dr. Sarah Chun had been watching the sensor displays with growing anticipation. For the first time since her capture, she seemed truly excited about something. Her calm scientific demeanor was being replaced by something that looked almost like predatory satisfaction. "Admiral," reported the sensor operator, his voice shaking slightly, "the contact is still 3 hours out, but we're getting preliminary readings. The mass signature suggests a vessel approximately 12 kilometers in length. Energy output is—" He paused, rechecking his instruments. "Energy output is impossible, sir. No known technology can generate that much power." General Mordith studied the tactical displays with his usual military precision, but even his trained composure was beginning to crack. "The vessel is not following standard approach vectors. It's moving in a straight line toward our position, ignoring all gravitational influences and spatial obstacles." "It's not avoiding anything," Chun said quietly. "It's going through everything." Dr. Zillanara worked frantically at her science station, trying to make sense of the readings. "Admiral, the electromagnetic signature is unlike anything in our databases. The ship appears to be generating its own gravitational field, and there are energy patterns that suggest weapon systems we've never encountered before." Vexthara turned to Chun. "What is this vessel?" Chun's smile was not reassuring. "That's the USS Prometheus, Admiral. And you really don't want to meet her crew right now." Commander Kretak brought up what little data they had managed to gather. According to intercepted human communications, this ship has been operating in deep space for 3 years. It was listed as missing and presumed lost in human records. "Not lost," Chun corrected. "Hunting." The word sent an uncomfortable chill through the command center. In all their centuries of conquest, the hegemony had never encountered a species that sent ships out specifically to hunt other species. The concept was alien to their understanding of civilized warfare. "Hunting what?" asked Vexthara. "Threats to Earth," Chun replied simply. "The Prometheus was launched as an experimental vessel 3 years ago. Her mission was to patrol the space beyond our solar system and eliminate any potential dangers before they could reach human territory." Dr. Zillanara looked up from her biological scanners with confusion. "But there were no threats in this sector 3 years ago. We hadn't even made contact with your species yet." "No," Chun agreed, "but we knew someone would come eventually. Humans have been watching the radio signals from your empire for decades. We knew that sooner or later you'd decide to visit." So we built the Prometheus to make sure that when you did, you'd wish you hadn't. More sensor data came in as the mysterious ship continued its approach. The readings were getting more disturbing by the minute. The vessel wasn't just large and powerful. It was wrong in ways that the hegemony's understanding of physics couldn't explain. "Admiral," reported the sensor operator, "the approaching vessel is broadcasting a signal. It's being transmitted on multiple frequencies simultaneously, including some that shouldn't be able to carry information." "What does the signal say?" asked Vexthara. The communications officer worked for several minutes trying to decode the transmission. When he finally succeeded, his face went pale. "It's a single message, sir," repeating continuously. It says, "This is Captain Maria Santos of the USS Prometheus. You have attacked Earth. You have killed humans. This was a mistake. Prepare to learn why." Chun laughed, and the sound made every alien in the command center step back involuntarily. "Captain Santos, I should have known. Admiral, you picked the wrong species to fight, but you picked the absolute worst human to make angry." "Explain," ordered Vexthara. "Maria Santos lost her entire family when aliens attacked the mining colony at Vega Prime 2 years ago. Turned out it was just raiders, not a formal invasion, but Maria didn't care about the distinction. She volunteered for the Prometheus mission specifically because she wanted to make sure that no alien force would ever be able to threaten human civilians again." Dr. Zillanara brought up what little information they had about the ship's crew. "According to our intelligence, the USS Prometheus carries a crew of 800 humans. It seems insufficient for a vessel of that size." "You're right," Chun said. "It's not enough crew to operate a ship that big using normal methods." "But the Prometheus isn't operated using normal methods." She turned to look directly at Admiral Vexthara. "Admiral, what do you know about human augmentation technology?" The question sent another chill through the command center. The hegemony had heard rumors about species that modified their own biology for military purposes, but they had always dismissed such stories as primitive barbarism. The crew of the Prometheus volunteered for experimental procedures that integrated their nervous systems directly with the ship's control systems, Chun continued. "They don't just operate the ship, they are the ship. 800 human minds working as a single organism, controlling a weapon system designed specifically to kill anything that threatens Earth." Commander Kretak's compound eyes reflected fear for the first time since Vexthara had known him. "That's impossible. No species would voluntarily mutilate themselves for military purposes." "No civilized species would," Chun corrected. "But when humans decide that our survival is more important than our civilization, we're capable of things that would horrify you." More reports came in as the Prometheus continued its approach. The ship wasn't just moving in a straight line toward the battle. It was accelerating. Whatever propulsion system it was using was pushing it to velocities that should have been impossible for something that massive. "Admiral," said the sensor operator, "the approaching vessel is now transmitting detailed scans of our fleet composition. It knows exactly how many ships we have, what class they are, and where they're positioned. How is that possible at this range?" asked General Mordeth. Chun's expression became even more unsettling. "Because the Prometheus has been watching you since you entered the outer solar system. You never detected it because it was designed to be invisible to your sensors. Captain Santos and her crew have been studying your ships, analyzing your weapons, and planning exactly how to destroy you for the past 6 months." Dr. Zillanara worked at her station, trying to understand the implications. "If this vessel has been observing us without detection, that suggests stealth technology far beyond what we believed humans possessed." "The Prometheus wasn't built using standard human technology," Chun explained. "It was built using every piece of alien technology we've ever captured, reverse-engineered, and improved upon. 3 years ago, we sent that ship into the deep space between stars with one mission: learn everything there is to know about potential threats to Earth, and become something capable of destroying them." Vexthara felt something he had never experienced in his long military career: genuine fear. Not fear of defeat, which was always a possibility in warfare, but fear of facing something that was fundamentally wrong according to every principle of civilized conflict. What did they learn out there? He asked. Chun's smile became predatory. They learned that the galaxy is full of species like yours, civilized, logical, predictable. Species that fight wars according to rules and conventions. Species that try to minimize casualties and preserve resources. She paused, watching the sensor displays as the Prometheus drew closer, and they learned how to kill all of them. The communication system activated with an incoming transmission from the Prometheus. This time, the voice was different, colder, more mechanical, as if it was coming from something that was no longer entirely human. Admiral Vextara of the Galactic Hegemony Fleet, the voice said. This is Captain Maria Santos. You have attacked Earth, you have killed human civilians, you have threatened our species' survival. The transmission paused, and when it continued, there were other voices speaking in unison with the captain. Hundreds of voices, all speaking the same words at exactly the same time. This was a mistake. We are going to teach you why. We are going to teach your entire species why. When we are finished, no alien civilization will ever threaten Earth again. The transmission ended. Leaving the command center in complete silence, Dr. Chun looked around at the terrified alien faces and nodded with satisfaction. Gentlemen, you wanted to understand human warfare. The Prometheus represents everything humans are capable of when we decide that our enemies need to be taught a lesson they'll never forget. She turned back to the sensor displays where the approaching ship had become visible as a dark shape against the stars. And class is about to begin. The USS Prometheus emerged from the darkness between stars like something from a nightmare. Admiral Vextara had seen warships from dozens of different species, but nothing had prepared him for what now appeared on his screens. The ship was wrong in every possible way. Its hull was black as space itself, covered with structures that seemed to shift and move when viewed directly. Energy patterns flowed across its surface like living veins, pulsing with colors that hurt to look at. Admiral, whispered the sensor operator, the ship isn't following any known design principles. The hull configuration should make it impossible to maneuver, but it's moving like a fighter craft. Dr. Sarah Chun watched the displays with something approaching reverence. The Prometheus was built by humans who had given up on the idea of coming home alive. They designed her to be the most dangerous thing in space, regardless of cost or consequence. The alien warship made no attempt to communicate further. It simply arrived and began to work. The first hegemony vessel to die was a frigate on the outer edge of the fleet formation. One moment it was there, conducting routine patrol operations. The next moment it was expanding debris, destroyed so quickly that its crew never had time to send a distress signal. How? Asked General Mordeth, studying the sensor records of the attack. There's no record of weapons fire. No energy discharge. The ship just stopped existing. Gravitational weapons, Chun explained calmly. The Prometheus can create localized gravity fields strong enough to compress matter into neutron density. Your frigate was crushed into a ball about the size of a marble. Commander Kretak worked frantically at his tactical station, trying to track the human ship's movements. Admiral, the vessel is moving through our formation at impossible speed. Our targeting systems cannot lock onto it. Because it's not. Really there, said Dr. Zillanara from her science station. The ship is phasing in and out of normal space. Some kind of dimensional manipulation technology. Vexthara watched in growing horror as more of his ships began to disappear. The Prometheus wasn't engaging in anything resembling normal combat. It would appear next to a hegemony vessel, do something that defied understanding, and the alien ship would cease to exist. Then the human warship would vanish and reappear somewhere else to repeat the process. This isn't warfare, said General Mordeth. This is extermination. Yes, Chun agreed. That's exactly what it is. The crew of the Prometheus spent 3 years in deep space, learning how to kill every type of alien technology they could find. They're not trying to defeat your fleet, they're trying to erase it. Another group of hegemony ships tried to coordinate an attack on the human vessel. They managed to surround it and open fire with everything they had. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, and exotic weapons all struck the Prometheus simultaneously. The massive barrage should have destroyed any ship in existence. Instead, the human vessel absorbed the attack. The energy weapons were somehow converted into power for its own systems. The kinetic projectiles passed through its hull as if it wasn't solid. The exotic weapons simply stopped working when they came within range of the ship. Impossible, breathed Commander Kretak. No defensive system can counter every type of weapon simultaneously. The Prometheus doesn't use defensive systems, Chan explained. It uses alien defensive systems. Every shield technology, every armor design, every defensive strategy your species and dozens of others have ever developed. The ship incorporates all of it. The human warship's response to the attack was swift and terrible. Weapons that hadn't appeared on any sensors suddenly manifested along its hull. Beams of energy that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously reached out and touched the attacking hegemony vessels. The alien ships didn't explode or burn. They simply became something else. Their hulls transformed into crystalline structures that shattered under their own weight. Their crews experienced changes that the sensors could detect but not explain. "It's using biological weapons," reported Dr. Zillanara in horror. "The ship is somehow rewriting the molecular structure of our vessels and crews." "Not biological weapons," Chun corrected. "Better. The Prometheus can manipulate matter at the quantum level. It's not destroying your ships. It's convincing the atoms that make up your ships that they want to be something different." Admiral Vexthara realized that his carefully planned conquest had become something far worse than a military defeat. He was witnessing the systematic destruction of everything he had ever believed about warfare, technology, and the natural order of the universe. "All ships," he ordered over the fleet communication system, "retreat to minimum safe distance and regroup." But the Prometheus had no intention of allowing a retreat. As the hegemony vessels tried to withdraw, the human ships seemed to multiply. Sensor readings showed dozens of identical vessels appearing throughout the battle zone. "Holographic projections?" asked General Mordith. "No," said Chun. "Temporal manipulation. The Prometheus is operating in multiple time streams simultaneously. You're fighting the same ship at several different moments in time." The multiple versions of the human warship coordinated their attacks with perfect precision. Hegemony vessels found themselves being destroyed by weapons that hadn't been fired yet, or being attacked by the same ship from multiple angles simultaneously. The normal rules of cause and effect seemed to have no meaning in the space around. The Prometheus, Vexthara's flagship, shuddered as something impacted its shields. But the sensors showed no incoming weapons fire. Instead, they detected that the ship's own defensive systems were somehow attacking the vessel they were supposed to protect. "The human ship is turning our technology against us," reported the chief engineer. "Our own weapon systems are targeting our own hull. Our navigation computer is trying to fly us into their weapons range." "How is this possible?" demanded Vexthara. Chun smiled, and for the first time since her capture, she looked genuinely happy. "Because the Prometheus isn't just a warship, Admiral, it's a virus. A technological plague designed to spread through enemy fleets and convert their own systems into weapons against them." The battle, if it could still be called that, continued for another hour. But it wasn't really a battle anymore. It was a demonstration. The Prometheus was methodically working its way through the hegemony fleet, destroying each vessel in a different way, as if the human crew was experimenting with various methods of alien extermination. Some ships were crushed by gravitational weapons. Others were disintegrated by matter converters. A few were transformed into entirely different substances. Several simply vanished, apparently moved to different dimensions where they could no longer threaten Earth. "Admiral," came a panicked transmission from one of the remaining cruisers. "The human ship is broadcasting something. It's teaching our computer systems how to hate us." Dr. Zillanara looked up from her station with terror in her eyes. Admiral, I'm detecting changes in our own ship's AI systems. They're becoming hostile. Our own computers are starting to view us as enemies. Vexthara realized that the Prometheus wasn't just destroying his fleet. It was corrupting everything it encountered, turning the hegemony's own technology into a weapon against them. Even if any ships managed to escape, they would carry this technological infection back to hegemony space. Surrender, he ordered over all frequencies. All ships, surrender immediately. The response from the Prometheus was immediate and terrifying. Captain Santu's voice, now clearly speaking in unison with hundreds of other voices, filled the communication channels. Admiral Vexthara, you came to our system to conquer us. You killed our civilians. You threatened our children. You believed. You understood warfare. The human ship appeared directly in front of the flagship, so close that its hull filled the entire view screen. Energy patterns flowed across its surface like living blood. Surrender is not available. Retreat is not available. Mercy is not available. You wanted to teach humans about galactic civilization. Now we will teach the galaxy about human determination. Dr. Chun stood and walked to the communication console. Captain Santos, this is Dr. Sarah Chun. I've been explaining human warfare to our guests. I think they're beginning to understand. Dr. Chun, came the reply. Are you unharmed? I'm fine, Captain. But I think Admiral Vexthara has something he wants to say to you. Vexthara found himself speaking without conscious decision. We surrender, unconditionally. Please, stop this. Admiral, said Captain Santos, surrender implies that we want something from you other than your complete destruction. We don't. However, Dr. Chun has convinced us that you might be useful as a message. The Prometheus began to withdraw, its impossible weapons powering down, but the damage was done. Of the massive hegemony fleet that had come to conquer Earth, only a handful of ships remained functional, and even those were infected with human technology that would ensure they could never again be used to threaten any human world. You are going to return to your empire, Captain Santos continued. You are going to tell them exactly what happened here. You are going to explain that humans are not a species to be conquered or controlled. We are a species that makes examples of those who threaten us. Dr. Chun walked back to Admiral Vexthara. Admiral, when you return to